Hello and welcome to the podcast. This is Ron's Amazing Stories. We have stories that should thrill you a little and chill you a little.
It's amazing.
What you'll hear are adventures sent in by you guys, classic stories from the pulp mags, and episodes from the golden age of radio. We have special segments like Ghost Stories with Sylvia.
That's amazing.
And These Are Your Stories. So settle in for the next hour and enjoy the show. One more thing. You just might want to prepare yourself to be taken away from today.
Another 5-minute mystery.
This 5-minute mystery is being brought to you by Ghost Stories with Sylvia.
Can you feel the excitement in the air?
I know I can. We have 49 minutes and 44 seconds of paranormal goodness today.
It's a mistake. I suppose it's too late to stop it now.
Why would you want to?
Steady. Gotta hold my arm still.
Bullseye, Sergeant.
Yeah. It's a mighty fine revolver you have here, Captain.
I picked it up for a song in a pawn shop yesterday.
Here, load her up and let's see your aim.
Yeah, it's really a sweet job.
It is a nice gun, Captain. Only trouble is I'm lazy. I don't like a revolver. You have to go to all the trouble of picking the used shells out and reloading. Personally, give me an automatic. Just slip a clip in and...
Captain Jenkins, you're wanted upstairs immediately. A report has just come in over the radio of a shooting on the west side.
There goes our target practice.
Come along, Sergeant. We'll drive out and see what gives. You say your husband was sitting here by the open window when you heard the shot, Mrs. Williams.
That's right. I was in the kitchen. I came running in just in time to see Ben slumping down in the chair and some man running down towards the river there.
Sergeant, take a look outside the window for footprints.
Right at it.
Did you get a good look at the man, Mrs. Williams?
No, I didn't, Captain. He was too far away and running.
Well, why should anyone want to kill your husband?
Oh, he's quite wealthy, Captain, and, well, perhaps he's been a bit ruthless in his business dealings. He's made enemies, especially among the people in the tenements he owns.
No luck, Captain. Not a sign of a footprint.
Well, I didn't expect you'd find any. You see, Mr. Williams has powder burns on the right cheek where the bullet entered.
Well, I'll be... He was a suicide, then.
Mrs. Williams, there's no use in your lying. Where's the gun?
Gun? Why, there's no... All right. It's in the closet at the basement stairs. But I only put
I'll get it.
I didn't mean to do anything wrong, Captain. It's only...
I think I understand.
I didn't want any publicity to get out that Ben had committed suicide. It wouldn't be good.
Well, just what did happen now?
When I heard the shot and came in from the kitchen, I saw what Ben had done. The gun was still in his right hand. I gently removed the gun and put it in the closet. Then I made up the story of seeing the man running.
You didn't do anything else? Didn't touch the gun in any other way? Or didn't change anything about your husband?
Oh, no.
Here's the gun, Captain. Small caliber revolver. One cartridge missing from the chamber.
Where's the missing cartridge, Mrs. Williams?
I threw it into the furnace. It was lying on the floor beneath Ben's hand. Oh, I've made such a blunder of things.
I'll say you have, Mrs. Williams. You've blundered yourself right into a murder charge.
In just a moment, we shall return for the solution to our mystery. In the meantime...
A gun lesson followed by a murder via a small caliber revolver. Open and shut case, if you ask me.
I didn't, but please enlighten me.
Simple logic. It's all about the casings.
Are you spouting nonsense again?
I would counter, are you as dumb as you appear?
Sticks and stones.
More like casings on the floor.
It is confirmed you are an idiot.
Well, thank you.
And now, back to our story.
Yes, Mrs. Williams, you blundered on every move, but especially when you stated you had picked the cartridges off the floor from under Ben's hand. You couldn't have picked the cartridges off the floor. The revolver doesn't eject its cartridges. If your husband had committed suicide, he couldn't have removed it. But you did, and threw it in the furnace as part of the plan. I wonder what story you'll cook up for the jury.
Okay, I have to give you due credit for that one. The casing on the floor was a pretty big clue.
Yes, and if you think about it, that FMM was pretty well thought out.
Ah, right. But it was still dumb, lacked any depth, and made my ears bleed.
Well, there is that.
What's that you say?
Hello, and welcome to the podcast. Today is all about time, space, and mirrors.
This is ridiculous. You're just making stuff up.
Well, actually, Sylvia and I will be telling stories about such things in a new installment of Ghost Stories with Sylvia. We have given it the title of Terror in the Fabric of Reality.
That sounds very scary.
Yeah, it is what it is. We cover time slips, slaps, and mishaps.
That sounds amazing.
I think so. I do have some news for you today. This week I received an email from Tyler Blake. Tyler's from Miami. He informed me that Ron's Amazing Stories is no longer available on Spreaker. I went and checked, and sure enough, the show has been removed. It appears that Spreaker was bought out by iHeartRadio and is now a paid podcasting host provider. So in order for me to be available there, I would have to create a new podcast and upload the show separately. Also, since they're now a hosting service, that means that you would still have to listen to the show on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or some other service. That doesn't make sense for me to have an account there and would just add additional costs to the show. My apologies to anyone that is affected by this. If you did listen to the show on Spreaker, simply switch to a new service like Apple, Spotify, etc. If that is not your cup of tea, you can go directly to ronsamazingstories.com and you will find us there. Did you know that Ron's Amazing Stories is sponsored by Audible? Audible is home to over 180,000 audiobooks, any of which can be yours. All you have to do is sign up for a 30-day free trial, and Audible will give you a free book and access to their original content. To download your free audiobook, go to audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories. Thank you, Audible. We all love a good story, but what we truly crave is a ghost story. It's time now for Ghost Stories with Sylvia. Sylvia Schultz is a librarian and author by day, but at night, she becomes a ghost hunter. Following a lifetime spent in the pursuit of the weird and the strange, her non-fiction works include Ghost of the Illinois River, Fractured Spirits, 44 Years in Darkness, Hunting Demons, and The Spirits of Christmas. We now cross over the veil and join Sylvia as she tells us more tales from the unknown. Sylvia, are you there?
Hey, Ron, come on in.
Sylvia, how you doing?
I am doing fantastic. How are you?
Well, this is less than 2 weeks since the last time we did a podcast. The problem was, not everything went well on our first attempt to do a podcast.
This is true. But we are professionals, so we can fix it.
Well, we're not going to fix it. I've already decided that podcast, it was great, guys. I'm telling you, it was a wonderful podcast. But this one is going to be totally different because that's how we roll. We never know what one of us is going to say to the other one in anytime, anywhere, anyhow. So,
right.
So that podcast that no one's ever going to hear, even though we're going to do the same subject matter, is going to be totally different.
That works.
Now, just so you can hear, this is the first podcast. This is what the whole thing sounded like, just like this.
Yeah, they are getting up there, aren't they?
No, it's about $5 a gallon here. I figured out our mistake. We talked about gas prices.
We angered the universe.
We angered the universe. So I'm going to say no talk of gas prices this time. None.
That's fine. I just don't even want to think about it.
All right. So what do you say then, rather than spend all this time not talking about gas prices, we get right into the stuff?
Let's do it. I understand we have a couple of emails.
We have two, sort of. One is an out-and-out email from Janet Marlborough. The other one are two emails that were sent into the show that I promised that I would get your feedback on.
Aha.
So I'm going to give you the choice. Do you want to start with the email/question or the synchronous event that we had?
Let's go ahead and start with the email.
All right. This does come from Janet Marlborough. She lives in Baltimore, Maryland. Nice city.
Cool.
Hello, Ron and Sylvia. Love what you guys do, and I want to thank you for Ron's amazing stories. The other day, I was in a parking lot at Target. I was sitting there waiting for my daughter to come back from the store. While I was there, I felt this weird sensation from behind me, and I turned and saw a creature run to the window of my door, stop, look at me, and then disappear. Was this just a psychotic break? Or did this really happen? I don't know what to make of it, and it's driving me crazy. I think it happened, but it could have been a trick of the eye. I just don't know. Janet Marlborough, Baltimore, Maryland. All right, well, I'm going to start if that's all right with you, Sylvia.
Sure thing.
I have never told this before. Well, that's not true. I told this on the podcast that didn't work. But I am telling you that I've never told this story before. I was in the parking lot at Walmart a few years ago, and I had this exact same experience. I was sitting there, and out of the corner of my eye, I swear I saw something run to the car door, look in the window, and disappear.
Oh.
And when I turned my head, there was nothing there. So I had that same experience. I wrote it off to a trick of the eye. But I've never been so sure that that's what it was. So, Sylvia, what do you think?
Well, I just got done reading a really interesting book. It's by Joshua P. Warren, and the title is a bit misleading. It's called Pet Ghosts, but he talks about so many more things than simply pet ghosts. I picked it up thinking it was going to be a collection of anecdotes, which I absolutely love. But this guy really did a deep dive into not only what he calls phantanimals, but things like Sasquatch and Yeti and cryptids like that, and also elementals. And he pointed out that we could be living next to elementals. They could be all around us, just like spirits could be are all around us. And we're simply not aware of them because we are not in the same phase or in the same physical plane that they are. And he said, we take for granted that there are things that we can't see, microwaves, radio waves, things like that, solar radiation. You can't see it, but it gives you a sunburn. These things this energy is around us, but some of it we just can't see. And it may be that elementals are just living out their lives or their existence, whatever you want to call it, right next to us, but we're not aware of it unless the conditions are exactly right for us to catch a glimpse like Janet did and like you did.
So you're saying that the possibility is for that brief moment, the two worlds collided and we saw each other. So they saw us and maybe we're just as frightened as us as Janet was by this creature that ran at her window.
It's entirely possible. They're just diddy-bopping along and living their own lives, and then suddenly here, oh gosh, whoa, what's this?
But you're not really suggesting a multiverse. You're talking about simultaneous authorship of the area?
Yeah, something like that.
That's interesting. Well, I don't know, but I can tell you from that experience, like I said, I wrote it off. I thought, it's just something corner of the eye thing. You read about 90% of the shadows that people see when they say, hey, I saw a shadow man, that was out of the corner of their eye. And science says that is entirely possible. Your eyes can do that. They can play that trick in light and make you think you're seeing a shadow.
And because the way our vision is set up, we can only see color in a narrow cone.
Yeah, that's right.
And in the front of our vision, and the stuff in our peripheral vision tends to be in black and white.
That's right. I've heard that as well. So could it have been a trick of the eye? Yeah. Or could it have been some sort of crash with an alternate reality? Why not? Or or could it have been an actual spirit, ghost, or even demon? Certainly. I guess what we can say for sure is we really don't know.
And that's okay.
But I do want to say this to you, Janet, that I think it's weird that we both had basically the same experience in a parking lot.
That is fascinating.
So I think there's some credence to that in itself. And so I would like to propose the idea that maybe there are parking lot monsters.
Could be.
No, not to make light. But Janet, thank you very much for your question. Thank you for writing in. I really do appreciate it. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Well, the next thing we have is a few weeks ago on the show, I received 2 emails on the very same day from 2 different people. Okay?
Okay.
One was from Raphael Holmes, who didn't say where he was from, and the other one came from Clint Morgan, who said he's from Minnesota.
Okay.
Your neck of the woods.
Sort of.
Midwest. It's all one big happy family, right?
Yeah.
Okay. The only difference between Illinois, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. Okay. This is true. Minnesota has all kinds of people that are from Scandinavian countries.
Yeah.
That you're Sweden, Norway, stuff like that. Okay.
Yeah.
In Chicago, well, they're all hoodlums, right?
Not all of them, but yeah, you go overseas. I mean, in as late as the 1990s, you go to Italy and you say you're from Chicago, and they say, "Oh, Al Capone, gangsters!"
Exactly.
Yeah, and they mime a Tommy gun at you. Yeah.
And all gangsters are Italian, right?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
That's just how it is.
Of course.
Okay. All right. But anyway, here we go. So I received this email from 2 different people, Raphael and Clint, on the same day.
Okay.
All right. And I'm going to read both of them, sort of read them. I don't want to read the whole emails because we already did these on the show a couple of weeks ago. Mm-hmm. Okay. So the first one from Raphael, he was 11 years old at the time. He was home alone and he was looking in the bathroom mirror. He saw what appeared to be a tall man with a hoodie and a weird-looking face. One half of the face was white, the other half was black. He heard his mom call that she was home from downstairs, so he ran as fast as he could out of the bathroom, went downstairs, grabbed her, dragged her up to the bathroom mirror, and everything was normal. He says, "To this day, I have not seen it ever again, but I always wonder what it was. I know I saw it. Ron, have you ever heard or seen anything similar?" Okay, but before I answer that question, let's hear what Raphael had to say.
Okay.
Well, Raphael says he's 16 years old, and he's been seeing a man in his bathroom mirror. I turn around, and there's nothing there. Okay? He dresses like some gangster in a hoodie and black jeans. His face is obscured, but it is multicolored and oddly shaped. I have tried to capture it with my phone, but all I get is static. I know it's hard to believe, but this is true. What do you think it is? Now, I'd like to point out again that these emails came in the same day, back to back. And what are the odds of that happening, number one? And what are the odds that two different people would describe basically the same thing?
That is really, truly amazing.
Yeah. So I do know this. So I have researched the mirrors in the past. I have not heard of any experience like this other than the Bloody Mary ideas of that ilk, where you speak into the mirror and what does it say? Bloody Mary, and so many times. And so I've heard of those kind of folklore or urban legend type of things, but I've never heard of anything like what these two have described ever.
No.
But I do know this. The Romans believed that mirrors could trap souls and cause bad luck to those who owned them. And so to me, that kind of gives mirrors a bad rap, and they always had. I mean, what happens when you break them, right? Bad luck.
Exactly.
And so I would love to give these two guys some pearls of wisdom and say, oh, yeah, I know what this is, but I don't know. But I did make them both a promise, and that is I would talk to you about this on the next Ghost Stories with Sylvia, which I think I've now set up, and I turn the floor over to Sylvia Schultz.
Okay. Well, yeah, mirrors have kind of a mystery all their own. I mean, you're always hearing people seeing things in mirrors, and here you have two almost identical stories arriving in your inbox on the same day. That is just wild. I don't have any sort of theory as to what these creatures might be, but I do have a couple of fun stories to add for people to consider.
Well, now you're defeating the purpose. You're not giving us answers that we need.
Gosh, yeah. Well, mirrors do have the reputation of being portals. I mean, you are in your room and you can see into another room that is just exactly like the place you are, but it's all backwards. And that kind of messes with your head if you're,
Bizarro world,
huh? I remember being quite young, like 5 years old, and being interested in this concept of mirrors and going, wow, this is weird. This is trippy. Okay, I wasn't calling it trippy when I was 5 years old, but anyway, you get the idea. So I was watching Nuke's Top 5 just last night, and they had a video on that somebody sent in that he was lying in bed, dead of night. He woke up because there was a light shining in his bedroom, and that light source woke him up. And he realized that the light was coming from the desk lamp on his desk, reflected in the mirror. But the desk lamp wasn't on.
Oh, dear.
Only the reflection had the light on. So chew on that for a minute.
No, I'm not going to chew on that. I do know this. I'm going to throw this in there real quick. I do remember as a kid, for a very short period of time, being afraid of mirrors. I was too young to remember all of the details, but I do remember being terrified of mirrors for a while. I've long since gotten over it, by the way. But
good.
Yeah.
Okay.
But so that type of thing does not help, Sylvia. Not at all.
Well, I came across another story.
I'm sure you did.
You and I did this podcast a couple weeks ago. And since then, anything with a mirror has kind of captured my attention.
Which is why I told people this was not going to be the same podcast that we lost.
Exactly. Yes. It's improved because we have more things. I'm currently reading another book, go figure. So this is the experiences of a psychic medium. And her name is Debbie Chestnut. And she was called to do a cleansing of an apartment, rather. A friend of hers had just moved in, and the landlord had said, well, yes, you might have a ghost in the house, and just don't pay it any mind, and don't go near the mirror. And the guy's like, well, okay, fine. So the guy had been living in the apartment for a couple weeks, and things like his baseball collection was put on shelves, and the baseballs would roll off the shelves and hit him as he slept. And things like that, and things would be thrown around, and poltergeist.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like a poltergeist.
Yeah. So he called his friend, Debbie, and said, will you please come over to my apartment and see what's going on? So she came over, and she is able to communicate with the spirits telepathically. But since she was with the guy who lived in the apartment, she's like, all right, I'm going to make it a little more transparent, and I'm going to use a rosary as a pendulum. And with that, you hold the rosary or the pendulum or whatever it is, and you ask, show me your yes. It's usually back and forth. Show me your no. And it usually swings in a circle.
I've seen that done.
Yeah. So she starts asking questions, and she says things like, are you trapped here? She gets a yes. And she says, do you mean my friend any harm? Gets a no answer. She's like, do you want to be released? Swings, and yes, please, yes. She realizes that she's getting closer and closer to the mirror that they've been warned about.
Mm-hmm.
And she can hear the spirit in her head. And he's like, you're getting so close. Please help me. Please help me. I want to be out of here. Please help me. So she's in that corner of the room, and she still has the pendulum, and she says aloud, she says, okay. And the landlord had told them that the spirit's name was Zach. So she's like, all right, Zach, I want you to show me with the pendulum where you are. So she's walking around the room, and the pendulum keeps nudging towards the mirror, and she goes next to the mirror, and the rosary starts banging into the mirror.
Oh, wow.
And she's like, whoa, okay. So she backs up a little bit, and she's like, okay, can you show me again? She comes a little closer, and then the rosary, again, bangs into the mirror from like 6 inches away. It just starts knocking against the mirror. And she's like, wait a minute, Zach, are you in the mirror?
Oh, wow.
And Zach goes, yes, I am. I'm trapped here. Will you please get me out? And she's like, okay. She's like, I've never done this before. And she was very careful about it. She's like, I do not want this to go sideways. She said, I will let you out. You can come into my body as long as you promise, as you swear to me that as soon as you get out of that mirror and into my body, you will leave. You will not stay in the apartment. You will go towards the light. And he's like, I promise. So she stands next to the mirror, and she says, feel my energy, come towards my energy, and come into my body. And she did. She felt it. She felt Zach come in. And just as soon, she felt him go out.
That's good.
And she said, all right, Zach, do you see the light? Do you see your family there? He says, yes, I see my family. Oh, thank you. So he goes towards the light. He's reunited with the family. Everything's fine. And after that, there's no poltergeist activity.
Wow.
And continuing with the story, she's like, I didn't have the presence of mind to do this at the time, but I really should have asked him, how did you get stuck in the mirror? But she said it just didn't occur to me. And then the moment was gone because he had gone into the light and everything was fine. But she's like, there are some questions I just don't have the answer to.
If we're going to go into folklore would suggest that given the proper state of whether you're spirit or flesh, you could potentially be trapped by just heading towards the mirror thinking it was the light, maybe?
That could be it.
I don't know.
That could be it. If he passed in the apartment and mistook the mirror for a light.
Exactly. And then
turned around
and realized that he was trapped. I mean, I can't offer anything on any of these stories. Like I said, they are so unique, but yet here we are with two stories from two different people. I'm guessing, even though that Raphael didn't say where he was from, I can't imagine that they are next door neighbors.
It's probably not Minnesota.
And Raphael, when you hear this, please send me a note where you're from. I'd be very interested in that. But I don't have answers for any of this. I don't have an answer for the story you just told. And the fact that you told a story to answer the question tells me you don't have a real answer either.
Not really, no. The world is full of mysteries.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it such a wonderful place.
It is.
And I've always said that my best friend is the person who can tell me a ghost story I hadn't heard yet. And I had not ever heard anything like that.
Yeah, that's crazy. The truth of the matter is we don't have answers.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on from that. And what we have is the title for this show. The title for today's podcast is Terror in the Fabric of Reality. Now, Sylvia, we've talked about this before, haven't we?
We have.
But, it's so interesting. It bears circling back from time to time. You have news stories, and I'm going to retell a story that has been on the podcast at least 4 times. This is going to be the 5th, I'm sure. This is one of the most incredible stories I've ever had. But to get us started, you came up with Terror in the Fabric of Reality. Sylvia, what does that mean?
To me, it just means that there's a bit of a ripple in time and space, and things kind of slop over into that ripple, into our time from that disturbance. No matter if it's something on purpose or if it just sort of happens, if there's a wrinkle in the fabric and times pressed together and kind of bleed over into each other.
Yeah, and that can take the form of a time slip where you're all of a sudden your life is going on and then you lose an hour and you don't know what happened. Yeah. Or that could take form of you're walking in downtown San Francisco and all of a sudden you're in Old Town, and I mean really old town. We're talking 19th century old town. And then you turn around and go back the other way and you're back in the 21st century. So time slips, tears in the fabric of reality. Hey, it's all fascinating. So we're going to revisit it, and we have some more stories. And I'm going to open, if that's all right, with a return story.
Sure.
I received this story from Jim Richards. Now, he currently resides in Atlanta, but he claims that his heart is firmly with Fort Worth, Texas. Jim is a private pilot working for his own airline. And he wants everyone to know that he's not crazy, not prone to general seizures, and does not take drugs or alcohol. Okay? Mm-hmm. Now, this is Jim's story in his own words. And I had a very nice long phone conversation with him, and I actually wrote his story for him. So I can tell you that these are actually his own words. Okay, so here's Jim's story. I am a private pilot, like you see on television. I hire myself out for parties, special freight, and take passengers just about anywhere they want to go. I own 2 planes. The first is a Cessna Skyhawk for those quick deliveries and flights. The second is a Cessna Caravan for larger groups and cargo. I have over 30 years of flight experience and have logged more hours than Chuck Yeager. Okay, I'm not real sure about that second claim. I've seen a lot of strange things up there, most of which can be explained. Once, while I was flying a heart for transplant from Austin to Dallas, my plane was bracketed by a series of lights. The med tech that was with me saw them as well. They seemed to be following us, and then, abruptly, they disappeared. I was never able to determine what that was. The med tech, I think, had the best explanation. He thought it was the heart's original owner saying goodbye.
I love that.
This type of thing is common, and it doesn't worry me very much. However, what happened on the last day of August in 1996 will forever haunt me. I did not fly for an entire year after that. I had been contracted to fly some dailies for a major film company to Houston for review by its director. In case you were wondering, I am purposely not using names. I was on the clock. There would be a bonus of $600 if I got the film there by 6 p.m. It was going to be tight, but if everything fell into place, I would have a steak dinner that night at Papa Bro's best steakhouse in Houston.
Nice.
The flight started out as normal as can be. I would be flying alone, no extra cargo, limited fuel to make the plane as light as possible. I had the flight plan, Fort Wayne to Houston, with a stop at DFW for fuel and rest. Pre-checks done, and I was waiting in line, looking good. It was a beautiful summer day with no clouds and unlimited visibility. Perfect conditions. Couldn't ask for any better. The first leg of the trip went without incident. I made it to Dallas-Fort Worth Airport in record time. That steak was looking pretty good. I was back in the air in about 30 minutes. I was 45 minutes out of DFW when the plane started to shake violently. I checked everything and found that there was nothing wrong. There was no storm activity or air currents that could account for it. Then, as soon as it began, everything went quiet. It felt like I was flying a simulator than a real plane. Not even the vibration of the engine could be felt. I called to Houston for any weather updates, and all I got was an eerie silence followed by a melodic tone that came across the speakers. Time came to a stop. At least it was moving so slowly that I couldn't perceive it. I looked out the side window and I noticed for the first time the sun was in the wrong place. It should have been overhead at this time of day, but there it was, due west of my present position. The plane itself seemed to glow with a faint green hue. Silence. Freaky, cold silence. I wanted to scream, but I held my wits and tried to bank the plane to the right. No response. The controls were like limp noodles in my hands. This went on what seemed like hours, or was it seconds? I really don't know. I have dreams about this to this day, some more terrifying than others. Finally, when I thought I couldn't stand it any longer, I burst out of the green sphere and the plane surged and shook. The engine roared as if it had taken hold of air for the very first time. I began a downward spiral and nearly lost total control. Finally, ever so slowly, the plane began to respond. I realized that I hadn't been breathing. I took a deep swallow and nearly passed out, but again my training took over and I fully recovered the aircraft. The first thing I did was to check my location and time. Not a second had passed. I was in the same position and time I was when the shaking had first started. All of the logbooks recorded a perfect flight. Houston had never lost my signal, and the same was true with Dallas. I made the rest of the trip with no issues, and I even got my $600 bonus. Well, I talked to Jim a little further, and he went on to say that he landed and he didn't go for no steak. In fact, he rented a car and drove back to Fort Worth. He had his plane flown home by a friend, and for the next year worked only in the office. After some extensive personal therapy, he was able to get back into the cockpit, but says he never has gotten over this experience. And so I say to you again, Jim Richards from Atlanta, Hart in Fort Worth, Texas, that's a heck of a story, and I can't tell it enough. I love this story.
That is worth telling over and over. That is weird.
So what we have here is a combination of time lost, time slip, and general weirdness.
Yeah.
He doesn't offer any explanation, nor should he. I can tell you, in talking to him on the phone, this was not a fabrication. This man, you could hear in his voice the absolute terror as, you know, the plane was basically falling out of the sky is the way I perceive it.
Yeah.
And yet, when he gains control of it, not a second passes. That makes no sense.
No, it doesn't. That's the weirdest part.
So,
and the fact that the air control towers never lost him.
No.
That's just bizarre.
Yeah, either he's totally making this up and it's a great story, or this happened and it's a great story.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, either way.
Yeah. All right. So, do you have any ideas on that one, or do you want to just go to your story?
There's no way I can top that.
Well, there's no topping. But have you ever heard of anything like that before?
I haven't. I mean, the closest I can think of even is something out of the Bermuda Triangle.
Yeah, that's what it feels like, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Even the green glow. Do you remember, I don't know if you're big on science fiction. There was a movie from the 50s. It was called The Silent Earth. And part of the experience of that movie is the aliens take control of a jet while it's crashing and safely land it on a airport.
Oh, my.
And there should have been no way that he should have been able to survive, but that was a strange green glow around the aircraft. That's the only thing I've even heard that remotely sounds like it. Yeah. And that's from the 50s. Mm-hmm. And it's a great movie, by the way. If you've ever not seen it, The Silent Earth is...
I have not.
Yeah, it's a very good movie.
I should check that out.
All right, Sylvia, your turn. What do you got for us?
Okay. Well, the first one I have is something very intriguing to me, and I call it Ghosts of the Pioneers. So this comes from Reed Canyon, New Mexico. Mark Newton of Rio Rancho, New Mexico, wrote this account of an experience that he had. Since my lifetime occupation has been that of a forester and timberman, it was not unusual to find myself alone in the rugged back country of New Mexico on a crisp November evening in 1956. Reed Canyon was new to me, however. Early in the morning, I would start cutting Christmas trees, but first I was looking forward to a good night's sleep on my bedroll in the back of my pickup. I had just fallen off to sleep about 9 p.m., when suddenly I was awakened by the sound of someone coming with wagons and teams. My first thought was that I had parked on a road, and I must move my vehicle to let them by. Upon looking about, I could see no one, however, on this bright moonlit night. Meanwhile, the sounds were getting louder and coming closer. Wagon wheels were now scraping against rocks. Whips cracked like gunshots amid men's shouts of gee and haw, while the horses labored for breath. I found myself engulfed in a sea of sounds. Dogs barked, a baby was crying, and people were talking above the din of dishes and utensils clattering and banging inside wagons. At one point, a woman's voice seemed to pass right by my ear as she said, "I must stop and milk Bossy when we get to the bottom of the hill." For several hours, the sounds continued as they laboriously climbed the steep hill, diminishing only after they had reached the top and started down the other side. Then, once again, it was still. What were my reactions to this strange phenomena? First, I was curious. Then came apprehension, followed by disbelief, and finally fear after the impact hit me. Upon my return to town, I told several people about my experience, and they said they had heard almost identical sounds while tending sheep on numerous occasions. I encountered the phenomena several times more. So that's your terror in reality.
Yeah, that is strange. You know, and one of the interesting things about it is one of my favorite types of stories is when you hear about people being shifted into an alternate time. We were talking about mirrors earlier in the show, alternate reality. One of the cool stories that I've ever heard is, and I kind of alluded to it before, was I heard a story about a gentleman that was walking in Old Town San Francisco. And he was walking along, and then all of a sudden, it really was Old Town San Francisco. The people were dressed appropriately. Everything was as it was in the 1800s.
That would be disconcerting, but man, I would love to experience that.
But he said it was just and he was out of place. I mean, obviously he's dressed in completely different manner than they dressed back then. And, but he looked and he thought, well, I'm just going to backtrack. He turned around and walked back a bit, and everything was 21st century. And then he turns around and everything, it's all gone. But for that brief minute, He was there in San Francisco, 18 whatever, and, it's just those types of things that I believe it's possible. We talked about the pictures that we sometimes see from the past where everybody swears that this woman is holding a cell phone to her ear. Right? Or there's a hipster in the middle of a crowd at the Olympics. He's dressed completely out of character for the time, but completely in character for our modern day hipster.
Yeah.
And so is it possible? I like to think so. I like to think that just like you can have alternate realities and a spiritual world and a non-spiritual world, colliding, which we call Sylvia out ghost hunting. And that, but why can't we find ourselves in a situation shifting? And I've talked about my personal experience many times on the show where I was in the park on a bright sunny day, and there was a shadow in the middle of the
bleachers,
in the middle of the bleachers, and he's just standing there. And later, when I do research, 1950s, late 1940s, 1950s, that's where the bus stop was for the Army base that was there.
That's brilliant. I love that story.
And I've told that one so many times, I'm not going to tell the whole thing here again. But my point is that I do think time realities happen and things shift and we find ourselves out of time.
Yeah. And I believe it is possible. I've heard so many anecdotes. I mean, there's tons of anecdotal evidence out there. And Albert Einstein was a firm believer in the possibility of time travel.
Yeah, he was.
I mean, this is one of the world's preeminent physicists explaining things like spooky action at a distance, and if you tickle one electron, another electron will laugh.
Yeah.
One of my favorites is he was explaining what isn't necessarily time travel, but he was explaining radio, and he said if you step on a cat's tail in New York, the yowl will be heard in Los Angeles.
Yeah, that's true.
Isn't that great? He was a firm believer that, yes, time travel is possible because of the strange behavior of these tiny, tiny, tiny little particles.
Yes. And
that make up everything.
And I'm going to take this a step further is I'm going to tell you how to time travel right now. You want to know how?
Yes.
It's so easy. Have you recently or at any time looked at a picture of yourself, for instance, with your father?
Yes.
Is that not time travel?
It is. It's going through photographs just the other night.
Yeah. Well, we all know that your father recently passed, and I'm sorry for that. But we do know that that's how we keep people alive, is looking at photographs. And don't we travel back to that moment?
Yeah.
We do.
Yeah, we do. I have a picture, one of my favorite pictures of him on my desk right now. I'm sitting here looking at it as we speak.
And you're traveling in time.
Yeah.
I'll take you another route. One of the things that I do here on the show is I do a bit called A Moment in Time. And what I always do with these segments is I go out and I grab radio broadcasts from the past, be it World War II or some famous event in history. I did the Hindenburg once, for example.
Oh, wow.
And you play these clips and you hear this gentleman describing the utmost horror that he's seeing. That is time travel.
Yeah.
100% time travel. There's no other way to describe it.
We are experiencing it along with him. Yeah.
And it may have been recorded 100 years ago.
So what?
Well, more like 80, but it's still, you're hearing a slice of time that was captured on tape.
Yeah.
And you can picture it in your mind because he's describing and he's crying and saying, oh, the humanity of it. Mm-hmm. And yet we're there at that moment. And that is time travel.
Mm-hmm.
So I am just telling you, if you want to time travel, it's so easy to do.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so we have spent the entire time talking about all these wonderful, marvelous stories and ruminating on time travel and thinking about terrors in reality. And these stories are so fascinating to me. And some of them can even turn out a little humorous. I came across a story a while ago that I just have to share.
Okay.
There is an abandoned gas station in a remote rural area of Vermont that seems to be the site of peculiar events. Harvey and Jessica Hanner, residents of a nearby town, say they filled their car with gas there in June of 1989. However, this station had been closed since 1967.
Not a problem.
After driving away, they suddenly found that their gas gauge read empty, despite the fact that the tank had just been filled.
So you're saying ghosts don't have real gas?
No. They returned to the station and found the attendant gone.
Amazing.
And boards on all the windows. A ghost ripped me off for $11, Harvey says.
You know, it's funny, but that's not the first time I've heard a story very similar to that. Jim Harold likes to tell where a family was out driving and they found this really nice roadside cafe/bar. They go into there and they have a great time. The patrons all treat them with great respect and everything, and they love the time that they had there. And they go home, they go off, and then they say, "Hey, let's go by there again." And not only is the place closed, but it's a dilapidated building with no roof. So I don't know, do you have any kind of final thoughts on this? I think we're going to probably tell this again. We're going to do this subject again with fresh stories, but...
Oh, definitely. There's so many stories.
Maybe even sometime tie it into the Mandela effect and maybe talk about that.
Ooh, we could do that, yeah.
Tie them together so that kind of help people see that there is some really weird stuff happening out there these days. All right. So, well, anyway, Sylvia, do you have any parting ideas on this whole subject?
Oh, it's just a magnificently strange world out there, and we're lucky to be able to catch glimpses of things out of the ordinary every once in a while.
So, what is going on with your blog and on the podcast? Specifically, I want to talk a little bit more about the podcast. The blog, if you want to hear it, Sylvia does these little tidbits of Today I Learned, and you can go pick those up. They're always interesting. The latest one is the difference between a cryptoologist and a cryptogamist. You got to read that one. So go ahead on over to Sylvia's place and check it out. But Sylvia, let's talk about the podcast because you're going back somewhere. Where are we going?
Oh, man, I have fallen in love with Malvern Manor in Malvern, Iowa. It used to be the Cottage Hotel back around the turn of the last century. And it is an extremely active place. The first time I was there was in broad daylight, and I could tell there was energy swirling around there that needed to be explored more. So I returned to Malvern Manor, and that is the upcoming Lights Out episode, Return to Malvern Manor. And this time I explored it at night. I explored it all night because I got to sleep there.
And I don't want to give any spoilers away, but I understand that you got something special to tell us on that one.
Oh, I do. It's always a thrill for investigators to capture evidence, and I made a fantastic capture that I cannot wait to share with everybody.
So that is, by the time you're hearing this, that's available.
Yes.
So head on over to sylviaschultz.wordpress.com and you can listen to The Return to Malvern Manor. Correct?
Yes.
All right, then. So I guess I got one more thing. You got something coming up in a few days that you're pretty excited about.
Oh, yeah. Well, I am so taken with Malvern Manor that I am going to do another overnight there this coming Saturday. And Malvern Manor is very close. It's about 15 minutes away from Villisca, where, of course, the Villisca Axe Murder House is. And I have a coworker that is very interested in learning paranormal investigations. So he and I are going to explore Malvern Manor, and he's going to sleep in the captain's room, and I'm going to sleep in Susie's room again. And then on Sunday, we're going to swing by Villisca and explore Villisca on our way home.
Okay. So to get this right, You are not only going to this week return to Malvern Manor, but you're going to this Saturday return to Malvern Manor again. And in the same trip, you're going to go to an axe murderer's place.
Yes. Well, they're so close. I mean, they're 15 minutes apart. It would be a shame to go to one and not go to the other. That's how I discovered Malvern in the first place, was I went to Villisca for an overnight and said, oh, hey, there's this place called Malvern Manor just 15 minutes away. I should check that out too.
I'll tell you this. Have you had your mental cognitiveness checked?
Not lately.
Because, going to one ghost house for a weekend, yeah, okay. But going to a ghost house and then another one that you had an extraordinary experience at, and then going to a axe murderer's house on top of it?
Hey, I like to double down, man.
Well, all right then. Double down it is. All right, Sylvia. Well, we have reached the end of this podcast, the end of this chat. Do you have any parting words for us today?
Oh, happy spring, everybody.
And I second that. We are actually recording this on the first day of spring. And Yay. I'm telling you, I went for a walk in the park today, and guess what I saw?
Robin?
No. Well, probably.
Violet?
But no,
It's too early for violets.
No, but I saw buds on a dogwood tree.
Oh, nice.
And when they bloom, is there any prettier tree in the world when a dogwood blooms in spring?
I don't think so. I think it's brilliant.
I'll take you a picture and I'll send it to you when it blooms.
Ooh, yes, please do.
But right now it's not all that great. It looks kind of dead still, but
it's coming.
It's coming. No, I'm guessing a couple of weeks, maybe not even that long. It's weird. You go to bed at night one night, and then you wake up the next morning, and then it's like the whole world has changed.
Yes.
So I'm excited, and so I concur. Happy spring, everybody. Thank you, Sylvia.
Absolutely.
Ghost Stories with Sylvia was brought to you by Gladys Goodies. I always have a great time talking with Sylvia, and I learn all kinds of new stuff. If you want to visit her on her home turf, head to sylviaschultz.wordpress.com. There you will find her blog and access to the podcast Lights Out. I will have links available in the show notes. Thank you, Sylvia. Gladys Goodies treats are a 100% natural, nutrient-rich treat that pets love to eat. You can get your treats and some really cool swag for your dog and cat at GladysGoodies.com. And don't forget to use our very own promo code RONS. That's RONS. And you'll get a 20% discount on all of your purchases. That website again is GladysGoodies.com. I hope you enjoyed this edition of Ghost Stories with Sylvia. Well, that was episode number 535, and we just keep rolling on. This time, I want to thank Tyler Blake and, of course, Sylvia for being with me today. It was so much fun, it just might be illegal. If you want to follow the podcast or the blog, head to ronsamazingstories.com. There you will find any of the links I mentioned and how to contact us. Do you want to help the show? The best thing you can do is to tell your friends all about it, and please leave reviews or feedback wherever you listen. Clicking that follow or like button makes us grow. Thank you for listening, and I hope you come again to find out what are Ron's Amazing Stories.